before glass cities reached for the clouds, before steel and concrete claimed the skyline. There were other giants, born not from machines, but from the forest itself. Imagine building a house longer than a modern jet, without nails, without saws, without a single piece of metal, only bark, wood, and fire. Now picture this. A group of builders standing beneath the canopy, their hands rough, their hearts steady. The air smells of sap and smoke. Each swing of the axe is guided by rhythm, each tree chosen not by measurement but by memory. Before cities, before nations, these were the architects of the land. The native peoples of North America, raising great wooden halls that stretched 100 feet or more, homes strong enough to endure storms and large enough to hold entire families, entire generations, under one sweeping roof. From the icy Great Lakes to the misty Pacific coast, they built what we now call longhouses, the original American skyscrapers. Each tribe built them differently. Each region told its own story in wood and smoke. And every one of them began with the same spark, a simple idea that a home could be more than shelter. It could be community. It could be life itself. So how did they do it? How did they raise these living cathedrals from nothing but forest and fire? Stay with me, because we're about to step back in time to watch the first longhouse rise. From the ground up, before the longhouse rose from the earth, life moved to the pulse of the seasons. Tribes hunted when the rivers thawed, fished when the salmon returned, and followed the herds when the grass grew tall again. They didn't conquer the land. They moved with it, breathed with it, listened to it. But the land began to change. Families grew. Trade paths spread farther than the eye could see. The wind carried stories, and with them the idea of staying. Shelter was no longer a pause between journeys. It was becoming a home. In the deep forests of the northeast, trees towered like living pillars, elm, ash, and cedar, tall, straight, and full of strength. To the people who lived beneath them, these weren't just trees. They were the bones of tomorrow. One day, someone looked at those pillars and wondered, what if a home didn't have to be small? What if it could stretch far enough to hold everyone? Grandparents, cousins, newborns, a whole family line sharing the same fire, the same roof, the same heart. And so the first longhouse took shape, rising from the forest floor like a great wooden cathedral. Young saplings bent into graceful arches. Bark sheets overlapped like armor, each one tied, shaped, and layered by hand. In the center, a single fire burned, its smoke escaping through an open roof, a thin thread of warmth reaching for the sky. Inside, the air shimmered with heat and laughter. Each family had its place, but the flame down the middle belonged to all, a glowing line of light that stitched every heart together. It wasn't just architecture, it was philosophy, a living symbol of unity, of strength, of balance between earth and sky. From that shared fire, the idea spread across rivers, through forests, carried by stories and smoke. The longhouse was no longer just a home. It had become a statement, proof that community could be built not apart from nature, but with it. The longhouse was never one design. It was a conversation between people and the land that raised them. The soil spoke through the roots, the wind carved its lessons into bark, and the tribes listened. In the Great Lakes the winters were harsh. The walls had to hold strong against the cold. Farther west, where the sea breathed against the cedar forests, the people built wider, heavier, homes that could weather the rain and the salt. Everywhere the idea traveled, it changed, bending, adapting, becoming something new, yet always carrying the same soul within it. So now, let's follow that trail, from the misty rivers of the Iroquois to the storm-worn coasts of the Pacific Northwest, to see how each nation of builders turned wood, fire, and vision into a home that could hold generations. In the deep green heart of the Great Lakes, the Iroquois raised longhouses that stretched as far as the eye could see. Some were longer than a modern city block, ribs of elm wood arched gracefully into the sky, and walls of bark were tied tight with vines, woven with care by hands that had known the forest for generations. Inside, the air was warm with smoke and life. Each family tended its hearth, yet the central fire stretched down the middle of the hall, a single spine of light connecting everyone under the roof. Children played in the corners, Elders shared stories, and the rhythm of daily life pulsed quietly in the glowing shadows. The Iroquois called themselves Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. For them, this was more than a name. It was government. It was unity. It was a way of living together that stretched beyond walls and doors. Every section of the Longhouse reflected the clan it housed. Every doorway marked the presence of a nation. The council fire burned where all paths met, illuminating faces and decisions alike. Strength was measured not in wood, but in the space shared. And as smoke drifted upward, the idea of the Longhouse began to travel. Stories whispered along rivers, across trails and into other forests. The spark of innovation, moving quietly, waiting for the next tribe to take it and shape it in their own image. Farther north, where rivers twist like silver threads through forests and golden cornfields, the Huron raised longhouses that curved gently across the land. Young saplings bent into arches, woven overhead, and bark sheets overlapped like scales, strong enough to hold winter's cold, light enough to breathe with summer air. Inside, life moved like the flow of the rivers outside. Fires lined the hall, tending each family, yet their warmth stretched to all who lived beneath the roof. Children watched, learning from elders, while stories floated with smoke and laughter rolled down the hall like a gentle tide. Visitors were always welcomed. A home's worth, the Huron believed, was not measured by who lived inside, but by who could find warmth under its roof. Their longhouses were schools and theaters, laboratories of knowledge and survival. Skills, rituals, and stories blended with the scent of burning wood, teaching the rhythms of life to every generation. And as travelers departed, they carried the spirit of these halls with them, spreading the Longhouse tradition along rivers and trails. From northern forests, the idea drifted southward, toward warmer lands ready to take new shape, waiting for hands attuned to different climates, different woods and new rhythms of life. In the warm, misted forests of the south, where red clay glows beneath towering trees, the Cherokee shaped longhouses that blended with the land. Smaller than northern giants, often used for councils or gatherings, their walls of wattle and daub breathed with the earth, and roofs of bark and grass softened the summer sun, shielding winter winds with gentle care. Inside, fires glowed at the center, casting light on faces gathered in quiet attention. Elders spoke of harvests, disputes, and peace, while smoke curled slowly, weaving through the hall and carrying stories from one generation to the next. Every word, every gesture, every flame became part of the Longhouse itself, its voice, its rhythm, its soul. Travelers and neighbors were welcomed without hesitation, finding warmth and knowledge within its walls, and as the Longhouse stretched into the southern forests, its lessons and stories flowed onward, moving west toward mist-wrapped islands and the cedar-lined coast, where the ocean would demand homes built not only for shelter, but for story and spirit, where wood would speak in new ways, and fire would illuminate the past and future. On mist-wrapped islands along the Pacific Northwest, the Haida raised longhouses that were monuments of wood and story. Massive cedar beams, carved with faces of ancestors and animals, looked over halls where ocean winds met human voices. Planks overlapped like the feathers of a great bird, shaped by adze and fire, lifted by the strength of entire villages. Low doorways reminded all who entered that this was sacred space, a hall where life, ceremony, and memory converged. Inside, firelight flickered on polished walls, shadows danced across carved figures, while waves crashed outside, blending with the rhythm of drums and song. Every plank, every carving, every flicker of flame held lineage, myth, and spirit, transforming the Longhouse into a living story. And as these cedar halls rose above the mist, the Longhouse idea traveled with them, moving along the coast, shaping culture, rhythm, and community, ready to find its final voice among the mainland forests where cedar and tide would meet again. Along the mainland shores, the Coast Salish built longhouses that faced the water, raised on posts driven deep into earth and sand. Cedar, sacred and fragrant, was split, shaped, and lifted by villages together, each motion rising in rhythm with song and breath. Under a single roof, many families lived side by side. Fires glowed warmly, illuminating faces and movements, while drums and dancers filled the hall with energy and spirit. Masks came alive, smoke spiraled to the sky, and the ocean's heartbeat mingled with the pulse of human life. These halls carried more than wood and flame. They carried the essence of all Longhouses, the Iroquois, the Huron, the Cherokee, the Haida, different lands, different hands, yet one rhythm ran through them all, that a home is not measured by walls, but by the life, care, and connection held beneath its roof. And as smoke rose with the tide, the Longhouse became more than a building. It became a living thread, binding people and land, past and present, across a continent that learned to build together, one hall, one fire, one story at a time. Long after the fires dimmed and the forests shifted, the Longhouse lived on, not only in wood and bark, but in memory, in story, in the rhythm of shared life. Across rivers, plains, and misted coasts, the designs of the Iroquois, Huron, Cherokee, Haida, and Coast Salish continued to echo. Even when new materials arrived, nails, metal, the principles remained the same. Space shared, community cherished, lives intertwined beneath a single roof. The Longhouse taught lessons beyond shelter. It taught governance, respect, and unity. It taught that walls could hold more than people. They could hold culture, wisdom, and the pulse of generations. Council fires, hearths, and carved beams became symbols, markers of identity and connection that outlasted storms and time. Today, echoes of these halls remain. In preserved structures and reconstructions, in museums, stories, and the hearts of descendants, the Longhouse still breathes. Its long corridors remind us that humanity thrives not in isolation, but in collaboration, in care, and in shared purpose. And when the wind drifts through the trees of the old forests, or when the ocean tides brush the cedar posts along the coast, one can almost hear the laughter of children, the murmur of elders, the rhythm of life under a long roof, a heartbeat that carried across centuries, binding past to present, people to land, and one generation to the next. The Longhouse is more than wood and fire. It is a testament to ingenuity, to community, to survival. It whispers the enduring truth that a home is made by those who live in it, and by the life they share beneath its roof.